And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host for the evening, Joey Ream, Dave Barlett, and myself, Pete Goslaw, and our special guest, Coach John Konowitz. Welcome to the program, Coach.
Thanks very much for having me tonight. It's great.
I'm gonna flip it right over to Joey Ream, and then we'll take it from there. Go ahead, Joe.
All right. Hey, Coach, it's kind of awkward because we did this with Coach Brittany Cohen from SUNY Potsdam a couple of weeks ago, and this is kind of like for me, my formal introduction to you. You and I have really never personally met, but I want to say it's an honor to have you on. We've heard we're in our pushing 40 shows, I think 35 to 40 shows. You've been brought up in a lot of our shows, so.
Yep.
We certainly wanted to make sure that we got you on so we could hear your story. We have talked to we talked to Coach Curl years ago when we did this originally, but we've talked to Coach Curl, who mentioned you. We've talked to Coach Welch, obviously, mentioned you. Coach Spanbauer we had on a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully we'll get that show up and out there soon. And he's brought you up. So, we're just really looking forward to hear some good old SUNYAC and North Country basketball stories from a legend. So we'll give you a chance to tell a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are and what you're doing today.
Well, any of the stories they talked about after 10 o'clock at night probably weren't true. We had a lot of good times. We had a lot of fun, and I've been very, very fortunate. All three of those guys, I learned a tremendous amount from Jerry. I was a young coach coming in, and he was always great to me. And I'll certainly talk about him a lot more. And I got a lot of respect for Tom Spanbauer. He took over for us at Cortland, and I had known him for a long while before that. When I left there, they'd asked me to give them a list of people who I thought would be great as, taking over when we left. And he was certainly right on the top of the list right there. And he's done a tremendous job there. I love the way his kids play, and they really execute well, and they play hard. He's just a tremendous person. And Tommy, we had a great time together. This helper gig, I didn't realize was this easy. If I didn't realize it was easy, I've done it 40 years ago. I just sort of hang out and have fun, and it was good. But I've been involved in this most all my life. My dad was a coach in New Jersey. And we were involved in sports forever. And when we grew up in the late 40s, early 50s, we were part of this explosive growth in that area. And our towns were all these little 3-bedroom houses that were built one on top of each other. So every street had probably 75, 100 houses on it with 4, 5, 6 kids in them. And because they grew so fast, we were in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. They were putting new schools in. So we went on half sessions. And we would go to school from 7 o'clock in the morning till 12, our half of the town did, and it was great because at 12 o'clock we were done. And every street had their own team. It wasn't like, we had Little League and PAL football and stuff like that, but those were like extras. At 6 o'clock, you went to practice for them after you played all day long. And I can remember like it was probably 51 or 52 when the high school went to plastic helmets. They used to have the old leather helmets. And my dad bought like probably 85 football helmets home, and we had every kid for 3 blocks had our own football helmet, and that was like a big deal, but we would have track meets and baseball games and basketball, and you just went out and you played, and I think we're very, very fortunate to grow up in that time. And I was also, I go to practices all the time, and I was around people that set great examples for us. We knew what work habits were, and at that time, Vince Lombardi also had been at St. Cecilia's in Englewood, and a lot of the coaches in that area at that time started following his principles and the things he was doing before he went to West Point. So those kind of things were ingrained in the coaches down there as far as work habits and being fundamentally successful and doing the right things to teach people how to play the games the right way. If you blocked and tackled better than the other team, you're going to be successful. You know, if you defended well, you rebounded well, and you played together, you're going to be successful. You know, and I think those kind of things were really very, very helpful in our career as far as trying to teach those things to other people and just permeate those ideas through our whole career. And I think you get those ideas, but you always steal from other people as you come along, you know. And we've been very, very fortunate to have a lot of other coaches and a lot of other people come into our lives that we're able to take from also. That's just part of the whole, that's part of the whole game. You know, I went to a place called Glassboro State College in New Jersey, and I played there for 2 years. I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't the best student, you know. And when I went there, what they tried to do is they said if your grades weren't the best, they put you in a certain area to apply into. And my year was junior high education, and my junior year, I lifeguarded in Wildwood as a sophomore, so I really wasn't ready to go back to college anyhow. And I'd had an operation on my arm, and I had cancer in the bone, and I couldn't play anymore. And I went back as a junior, and my first 9 weeks were going to be practicum in this school in South Jersey. And I remember sitting there in a jacket and tie, and it was like 90 degrees out, and I'm watching these guys out in the field, and I'm sitting in the back of this history class thinking to myself, am I going to do this for the next 40 years? And I packed up and went home. And I ended up going to a place called West Liberty in West Virginia, and I graduated with a phys ed degree. I'm actually, I don't know if you heard of Phil and Joe Necro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Joe was my roommate down there. And
No kidding.
we really got a chance to see what great players. I mean, you see guys that are majorly, you think of these people as superhuman, just a regular guy. And John Havlicek was his next door neighbor, and Phil was there. And you got to understand, you know, these people just have something they do a little bit better than the rest of us. But they're normal people like the rest of us. They have the same problems and the same things that we do too, you know. And I got out of there and I came up and I had a job in Saranac. I was a JV football, JV basketball, and varsity baseball coach there. And I had the fortunate experience of Bob Hudak, who's at North Country still, was our head football coach. And I learned a tremendous amount from him as far as organization, how to run practices and things. And Morristown was the basketball coach, and I still think he was probably the best basketball coach I've seen ever come out of this area, out of Section 7. Great teams and great motivator. I mean, he taught big kids how to play big. I mean, and when he had those teams with the Ryans and the Butch and those kids in the 70s, and I guarantee if they had a state tournament, then they had a great chance of winning it. I came to Osable Valley in '70, and we were there for 12 years. Coached football, basketball, and track there. We had some good teams. We won 3 games our first 3 years there, or 6 games. I'm sorry, and but we won 95 the next 6, and we had such great help from the people in the towns. And I still, to this day, we moved back up here to Fern Lake in 2007. These people I really consider it's our hometown. You know, it's a great spot to be in. We had some great times here. We went from there to North Country and had some good people there, Dave. You know, it was you know that it was a great place to be. We were there for 3 years. Went to New Paltz for 4, and then we were at Cortland for 6, and then. My wife got involved in a financial service company, and we did that for, I'm still working with them. And then probably 7 or 8 years ago, when we came back up, I used to work with Tommy's daughter a lot, Marley. And he said, why don't you come in one day and just do individual stuff with the kids, you know, before practice and stuff. I said, all right. And next time it was, well, we're going to scrimmage Castleton this week. Why don't you come sit on the bench, you know, and then following week is we're going to go to Union. We'll pick you up at the Keysville-Sunoco station. And that's how we started there. And we had a good run together. It was a lot of fun, you know, and we were at Cortland, we coached Billy Porter, who's at Canton right now also. And he did a great job for us down there. We were very, very lucky. We had a lot of great kids, and they played hard.
Well, it's funny, Coach. We had Bill Porter on a couple of months ago, and didn't realize that he had played for you at SUNY Cortland. Dave has mentioned you when he was at North Country for a little bit, and it's funny because my son is Coach Spanbauer's manager at SUNY Cortland.
Oh, really?
And I other than knowing your name, I didn't know who you were. And so I was down in Cortland the weekend you were there with SUNY Plattsburgh this past season. And I was sitting with Shirley Cahill, Pete Cahill's wife. And
sure. Yeah.
that Pete and Shirley are my aunt and uncle. And she says to me, because I'm a basketball guy, she just says to me, "Is that John Konowitz on the Plattsburgh bench?" And I said, "No, can't be." I said, he's been retired. I didn't know he was back into coaching. If he is, and sure enough, I look at the pamphlet. Yeah, it is Coach Konowitz. So that's when I found out your history with SUNY Cortland. That's when I really started to I knew of you from North Country, but not SUNY Cortland. So that's kind of where we got to this point where I was looking forward to having you on the show, because that was my first. We didn't meet that day, but that was when I first saw you. So
yeah, well, Pete and Shirley were great people. They're from Malone, I think, too, weren't they?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and we taught there for 6 years with them, and it was funny because Billy, when I first went from New Paltz to Cortland, I went up on a weekend. The kids were playing. He come up to me. I didn't know him, but I knew his dad, Bob, from working at the Potsdam camp, you know. And he come up and he said, "Coach," he said, "I'd like to." He was a JV player, and he wanted to know what he could do. And he was a little bit heavier then, and he wanted to know some drills and stuff. And he came back that fall in great shape, and he could shoot the ball, you know. And it was right when the three-point shot first came in. We were the experimental league in the SUNYAC for the NCAA in that year. And he had 8 in one game for us, you know, and he really did a great job with that. He had 2 good years for us, and then he was assistant coach for us with 2 years. And he's just great. And his wife is a hell of a player too. She really can play, you know. But they were good people, you know, and they were always it was good to have. It was funny because when we worked the Potsdam camp, I got to know a lot of the Section 10 guys that I didn't know before. You know, when I first came up, I didn't know Bob Garrow at all from Section 10. He's the referee. He's like 90 now, but he really took me under his wing when I came up here. I worked Casey Jones's basketball camp for 20 years, and Bob worked there with me. He's the guy that got my first job up here. And he asked me if I wanted to come over and see Potsdam. I didn't know anything about Potsdam at that time. It was on a Sunday, and they were playing some Canadian team. And I remember sitting in the stands, and I was so impressed how they played. And I wrote Jerry a note after that, you know, just how well I thought they played. And if I ever had a kid good enough to play there, I'd be happy to have him play, you know. And I got a real nice note back. And I still hear from Jerry probably every month or every 2 months, you know, and he goes, "I still have that letter in my office, you know, and I show people all the time, you know, when he come in." And it just, he asked me to come work his camp. And I worked there for probably 12, 15 summers. But I mean, we had Billy Myrna, Jerry Horahan, you know, Jojo Benville, Steve Labart, Steve Skiff, you know, we had a ton. Steve K-Mac, you know, Mitch. It was fun. You know, we had a great time there, and it was a great learning experience just to be around Jerry all the time. You know, he got me the job at New Paltz. I mean, it was my recommendation to get in there, and we played up there. They hadn't had a winning season in like 10 years, and we were 4-24 the year before that, and we got the job in August, so we didn't really have a chance to recruit anybody. I'm trying to think how we're going to do this as far as, you know, conditioning, because the kids, there was no idea about let's keep 4 to 6 free for practices. Some kids might have class until 5, some have them 3 to 6. So I was trying to figure out how to do it for the preseason. So we ended up going from 6 to 8 in the morning. And we ran our preseason conditioning from 6 to 8 for 6 weeks. We did it Monday through Thursday. And the first night of practice, we practiced at midnight. We had 110 kids come out.
Ooh.
And we were cutting kids on the way to the water fountain. We were cutting them on the way to the bathroom. We were cutting them all over the place, you know. And we ended up keeping the 12 kids that went through the conditioning program. And they had been out of the SUNYAC for 10 years. They didn't know anything about the SUNYAC. And so Potsdam was a foreign place. They thought upstate New York was, you know, the Tappan Zee Bridge. And we go up to play Potsdam. We're 4-4, you know, and they're fired up. We're 4-4. It's more than they won last year. They think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I said, you sort of don't understand what's going to happen up here, you know. And we get up to Potsdam. This is when they had Brendan Mitchell and Troy Turner and those guys, right? So we get up there and we're talking to the kids about playing up somebody's nose, you know, defensively. This is how you want to be. And we get up for the introductions, and they got the newspapers, and they got the bullshit things going and stuff, you know, in the place. And Jerry would bust like 895-year-old people from Messina that would sit behind our bench back in there, you know. So we start the game off, and it's 8-0, so we call a timeout. Donnie Verkey from Plattsburgh is referee, one of the referees. So we call a timeout. I said, don't stop what you're doing. Take it to the rim. Keep going at him, you know. And, okay, 18-2. You get another timeout, you know. It's 42-4, and they run a back door to Brendan Mitchell. He comes about from row 12, and he takes two hands. He flushes. And it's 44-4, and I can still see Dale Tyree running down the side. He's going, timeout, coach? I said, no, let the maybe the lights might go out or something. We'll be happy. So we were the experimental league that year. We hit a 3, all right, from half court at the buzzer to make it 53-10. It's the only 3 we've hit all year. We didn't have any shooters, right? We had shooters, we didn't have any makers, right? And we made it
shooters.
10. We're walking off the court, and Jerry is in Donnie Verkey's ear. He's all over him walking off the floor, you know. I said, Jerry, you're up 53-10. What the hell's the problem? He says, Coach, he said, I just want to make sure if that call ever comes up again, he makes the correct decision. You know, I said, Jerry, go. We'll be back. They beat us 106-30. You can look it up in the record books, right? We lose by 70. Hey, they didn't run it up. They played everybody the second half. So the way the schedule was set up at that time, we didn't have a travel partner because we got late in there, and Albany played with somebody else. So we had to play Potsdam on Saturday night and then go play Plattsburgh on Sunday afternoon. And Plattsburgh had played Friday against somebody, and they'd played a 10-point game with Potsdam on Tuesday. So now we got to drive 2 hours through a snowstorm. Somehow it always snowed between Potsdam and Plattsburgh on that 22B or 12B, whatever the hell that thing, 11B or something.
11B, yeah.
11B.
Or Freightersville, wherever they were. We're on the bus, right? And I said to the kids, all right, what happened? They said, Coach, they didn't let us reverse the ball. They didn't let us get in the offense. I said, you know, you've done a really great job so far. But if you want to get to that level, the things we're talking about, playing up somebody's nose, that's the level you have to get to. Those are the things we have to do right. And we ended up beating Plattsburgh the next day in overtime. And that helped them so much to get that mental mindset of where they had to get to be where they wanted to go. So 2 years later, they came in when Steve Babiars and them were playing, and they were number 1 in the country again, and they'd won like 60 out of their last 61, and we beat them by 6 or 8 down at our place. And it was just pandemonium. I mean, it was crazy down there. And when the game got over, the kids, we had a kid had a big orange Hawk uniform running all over the place. And actually, John Cal, that did a lot of the Final Four games, was one of the referees on that game that night from Albany. But we had all the kids in their face. We had them all painted orange and blue and everything in the play. It was crazy. So probably 15, 20 minutes after the game, when everything gets calmed down, Jerry came down to the locker room and he congratulated all the kids, you know, and I thought to myself, that's the way it should be, you know, and he just was I just love the guy, you know, and a couple of my kids and my grandkids, one of my sons lives in Durham, and they got him tickets last year for that game they lost to Stephen Mercer or somebody down at Duke, you know, and but he's always he's always taken care of us, and I just can't say enough about the man. He's what he did at that place. The only thing is, every time we go up to Plattsburgh, to Potsdam, they have that big trophy case where they have their 49-game Suniac winning streak and everything, and they don't have the little poster about who finally ended it. You know,
Who ended it?
glass up there one day, but not there yet. But that's the thing with Jerry, and what he's done for North Country basketball is tremendous.
He is North Country basketball. I think you'd agree with that, Coach. And that doesn't shock me at all. We all think of him as one of the classiest individuals that you're ever gonna come across, and for him to go down to your team locker room after that game to give them their props, that's him that's him in a nutshell right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. We got him against Cortland 2 years ago. He wasn't so happy with that one. But he's been great to us, you know.
So, Coach,
is enough.
what led the prompt from New Paltz to SUNY Cortland? Was that were you looking to move, or did they come to you, or?
I loved it at New Paltz. I was the AD there the last 2 years, and at that time they didn't have the mandatory student activity fee. So everything we did was based on the student association giving you money to do what you had to do. And it was at the whims of the people that ran the student government association. And New Paltz at that time was a very progressive sort of environment there, you know, and it was tough getting money. I mean, there's times we go on road trips where I'd be over there begging for checks at 2:00 in the afternoon. The bus is leaving at 2:30, you know, and it got old, and we put up the mandatory fee 2 or 3 times. It got voted down, and we just bought a new house in New Paltz. And when I was the AD, I used to go run with the AD from Cortland. And at lunchtime, when we had our AD meetings, you know, and I got to know him pretty well. And he called me in February, and he said, you know, we're going to be parting ways with our coach. You know, would you be interested? And I said, Leah, you know, it's playoff time, you know, I really don't want to think anything about it, you know. And finally, about a month later, he called me again, you know, and he said, we'd like to have you come up and interview. And I was on the road for a week or two, and I got up there and they interviewed, and the last thing they asked me, said, what about your doctorate, you know? Everybody had to have a doctorate there. And I said, well, it took me 23 years to get a master's in liberal studies. I said, a doctor probably isn't going to be in the way there, you know. So I got home. My wife, she was pissed, you know, not really mad, but why would I want to do that? You know, we just bought a house and stuff. It's not going to be a problem. I said they want to have a doctorate and stuff, you know. So I'm not going to get it anyway, you know. The next day they called and they said, you know, offered the job. He said, what about the doctorate, you know? So they're going to waive the doctorate for the basketball and the football coach, you know. So football coach should have to have one either. And I didn't have to be the AD. I just had to teach 2 phys ed classes, you know, and coach, you know, and I liked that part of it. And it was a good experience there. I like Cortland. I like New Paltz. I like North Country. I like DuSable. I liked every place I've been. You know, it's been very fortunate. It's just funny now being at Plattsburgh because we were always the bad guy coming in. Now we're the good guys. You know, it's kind of nice.
Just, I wanted to go back just 1 second. Didn't you have a stop at Paul Smith's too?
No, I was at North Country. We used to run a basketball camp at Paul Smith's. We ran KC's camp. Actually, I've got a picture someplace of Larry Bird and Kevin McHale playing 1-on-1 in that little court out on the lake right there.
Oh wow!
At Paul Smith's?
At Paul Smith's, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did that for a while. When we had KC's camp, I mean, those guys used to come up. We had Russell up there. We had Havlicek up there. We had Lucius Jackson. We had Satch Sandra. I mean, those guys used to come up for $200 just for KC, and we go down and drink at the North End in Willsboro, and just great people. I mean, just unbelievable people, you know, and you don't see that anymore. I mean, everybody's got an agenda and they've got people. These guys just came, you know, and KC was I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from all the coaches that were there. I was a young guy then, and they all took me under their wing. And these guys were established people, and they were great to me. I mean, I learned so much. And you know this, Joe. You see so many people out and away from the game too. You pick up a lot of different things from different people, and after a while you have a philosophy, but you can always find ways to fine tune it. I mean, it makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. You got to tell us a little bit because we've had Chad Ledoux on and Coach Dumont from North Country. You got to tell us a little bit about your time at North Country and how that came about. And this big guy that is on the screen, was he any kind of player? Do you remember him?
Player. He was. He hurt his knee up. Yeah, wasn't it a knee, Dave? You hurt?
Yeah, I had a meniscus tear, and I had surgery to fix that meniscus.
Bob Hudak, we had coached together at Saranac, and he went to North Country after that. He was the AD, and he had asked me in like 1980 or 79 or something if I'd be interested in a job, and I said no. And that's when I hired Kevin. Kevin Neal up there for a couple of years, and then Kevin left, and we were running our KC's camp over at Norwich. And Bob asked me again about it. I said no, I wasn't interested, and I liked it all Sable, and I really didn't have any aspirations to go anyplace else. And I said, I gave him a list of like 6 guys to go interview, and he called me back and he said, we interviewed them all and we really don't want to hire any of them. Would you take the job? And I said, no, I'm not interested. And Eddie Hockenberry was the coach at Norwich then. And I was in his office when I took the call. We didn't have cell phones and stuff then, and he said, what was that all about? I said, they offered me this job at North Country. I don't want to do it. He said, Coach, I want to tell you something. You really ought to give it a shot. I think you'd love it, And we talked a little bit about the college part of it, and I talked to Bob, and I said, I'll see what happens. And I went over for the interview, and I really liked the people. And the more I thought about it, it got to be, to me, to a challenge. I just wanted to see if what we were doing would work on the next level. If the things we did would be successful someplace else, and it worked. We won like 16 games, 18 games last year. There were 21 and 5, and we only had 2 sophomores. We had like 10 or 12 freshmen, and that's when the New Paltz job came open. But the North Country thing was tremendous. It was the downside. What I tried to do was have half North Country kids and half kids from out of the area. And the way we did that was Steve Skiff, their team had they were rebuilding their gym or something that one year. It was the first or second year we were there. So they practiced at our place all the time. It's sometime before, sometimes after. So I got to know him pretty well. I don't know if you know Steve at all, but
we know Steve.
We were there one night, and it was like on a Friday. It was in the middle of January, and it's cold over there, and it's even colder in Tupper, And for some reason, we didn't have a game. He said, why don't you come over tonight? He said, we're having a Hawaii party in Tupper. This is Friday, like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we were there for 3 days. It's just everybody had Hawaiian clothes on, but it was wild. But he's a good coach, and we always had a good time with him. But what we tried to do was every time we had a home game, we tried to set up a Section 7 team would play a Section 10 team as a preliminary.
Yep.
So we would have the kids on campus there. They'd watch the first half of our game and then take off after that, So they got on campus. They see what our program is about. They can beat some of our kids. And then we ran the camps in the summertime. So we tried to have all North Country kids there. And we brought a lot of North Country coaches in. So our last 2 years there, we had at least 6, 8 kids from the North Country. At that time, we were getting most of the good kids from the North Country. We were getting some really good players. Look at kids like Paulie Lemza and Gary Manning, Todd Weaver from Harrisville.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Tommy LaPointe, was 6'10" kid from Ticonderoga. We had some really good players there, and it was a great mix. And I thought that They did a tremendous job of, we had a learning lab where the kids could go in for the extra help academically. And the other thing too was at that time, we played a lot of Division III JV teams.
Yep.
So we also got on their campuses so they could see our kids play. And we had kids, going to Binghamton. We had them going to Potsdam. We had them going a lot of different Division III schools. So it was kind of nice that way also. I loved it there, and it's funny because about 5 or 6 years later, we're back. I stopped there, and Bob Hudak and I were running out in the woods. I love to hike still and stuff like that. And we're running. I said, boy, you know what? I said, if I didn't have to coach basketball, I could have stayed here forever. Because the recruiting thing, after a while, I got old going back and forth. And he said, you didn't have to coach basketball. I said, nobody told me that when I was here, but it was fun. It was, they're great. I still go over there a lot. And I'll tell you what Jared has done with that women's program over there is I don't know if you've seen them play at all.
Oh, yeah.
We've ended up broadcasting some of their games.
Also for the last 10 years. And we played at Saranac Lake, and I stopped in to see them play somebody before the game. And I watched like a quarter and a half. They get that ball down the floor, and they defend. And he really has done it. And I don't know, used to help him the first couple of years, and they come after you. I mean, he's done a great job recruiting, but a lot of people can recruit, but they can't bring it onto the floor. And those kids play together. They believe in each other. I mean, they really get after it, and they play hard for him. He's put his heart and soul into that. And Chad's been the same way. I mean, Chad's a tremendous coach, tremendous. They got great people there. When you have people like that, you can't help but be successful. And I love that little school. I mean, they had their first, it's their 50th year, and they had their Hall of Fame over there a couple of years ago. And just to see so many of the people there, it's like being home almost. It was a great experience, Dave.
Now, Coach, you're a member of the Hall of Fame at North Country, are you not?
Pardon?
You're a member of the Hall of Fame in North Country?
Yeah. It was nice. It was a nice honor. It was a real nice honor.
Now,
It was deserved.
Yes. Now, are you presently at Fern Lake now, Coach?
I still can hear you.
Nobody can hear me?
I can hear you, Pete.
He asked if you are currently at Fern Lake.
Yeah, I live in Fern Lake right now. We're about 10 minutes out of Sable Fork. We look right at the backside of Whiteface from our dock.
I know it well. I have family that own a camp on Fern Lake. Thomas.
Oh, really?
Thomas and Joyce Glasgow, who has since passed.
Oh, Tommy Glasgow?
Oh, absolutely. My aunt and uncle.
He's 2 houses down from me.
Yep. Yep.
That's
They
okay.
passed. So all the Walls and Glasgows are my relatives.
Did you know Tommy passed away?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Tom
Yeah.
and Joyce,
Well,
yes, both
his
passed away. Yeah.
stepson, Dane, is one of my best friends.
Yep. Dane was a hell of a ball player in his day too.
He was a great ball player. We just played golf the other day, but we take turns at night drinking beer and watching sunsets from his dock to my dock.
So you've seen so you've seen his fireworks.
I didn't realize that. You gotta come up sometime.
Oh, I'll be up. So you've seen his fireworks show, obviously.
Yeah, no, they're great people, and he was a good player. He was a very good player, good baseball player too.
Can't hear me.
No, I can't hear you.
He just said something about the fireworks show.
Yeah, you ought to come up 4th of July sometime. He has a fireworks show he brings up from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's like wild.
I used to go up there, Coach. Time. Yeah, I play in their cornhole tournament. I make their cornhole boards that they play in their cornhole tournament.
He plays in their cornhole.
Are you playing a cornhole tournament?
Yeah, I made the boards.
You up there last year?
No, I haven't been up in 2 years.
We got beat in the finals last year.
Yeah, because I wasn't there.
Really?
Because he wasn't there.
Okay. No, I got to check this out, right? I got a guy that I went to high school with that we were good friends all the way through. And after we graduated, his parents moved to Michigan. So he went to Annapolis, and every time he had short time off, instead of going to Michigan, he'd come up and stay at our place. But I hadn't seen him for 50 years. And we reconnected probably 5-6 years ago, and we ended up playing golf in New Jersey. He moved back to Annapolis after he retired from the Navy. And we had another buddy that we played golf with. So I got a call from him probably, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm going to be going to Montreal, because his wife went to school with us also. And I have one of my grandsons was looking at Annapolis, so we would go down every year. My son and I and him would stay in Donnie and Jones and go to a football game and a basketball game, come back up. So he said, we're going to Montreal, and I'd like to meet you in Plattsburgh for dinner. I said, okay. So I said, why don't you stop at the house? So we stop at the house, and it's the same weekend as Dane's having the cornhole tournament, right? It's 4th of July weekend. So I had helped them put the tent up, and we're driving back that night, and they've got the whole family there, So it was raining out, and Dane says, come on back over for some chili, So we go back over chili there till like 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Went back over, played the cornhole tournament. They stayed for 4 days. They're going to stop for dinner in Plattsburgh and stay. So they've been coming up every weekend for the cornhole tournament from Annapolis for the same thing since then. They're great people, Dane and Lisa are. You gotta let me know when you're up again, Pete.
I will. I make all the cornhole boards for that tournament.
He makes all the cornhole boards for the tournament. He makes them.
Did you make the one that he gave me?
I don't know which one's that.
He gave me a cornhole board with a picture of Whiteface from the lake for Christmas present.
No.
You didn't make that one?
No.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's a beautiful one.
No, but you just gave him a new idea, Coach.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. Wow. We're there. What else you got, Joe? Where do you coach, Joey?
St. Lawrence Central. I took over for the great Joe Javenville.
Oh, you did, huh? What a great guy he is. Wow.
Yes.
Is that where, Stan Riggs? Is that Brazier Falls?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Do you know Stan Riggs at all?
The Riggs family. I know of the Riggs family. Yes. Our football field is named after Randy Riggs.
Oh, that must be his brother. Stan was the wrestling coach at Peru for 40 years.
Yeah, and I've heard his name mentioned before. He was either Randy's brother or I think he was Randy's brother, but I'm not sure. But we had a guy at St. Lawrence Central by the name of Randy Riggs.
They were in Sports Illustrated. They won like 150 straight matches. They still one of the best wressling programs. He was, but I know he was from Brazier Falls.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I didn't realize that. So who do you play over there in St. Lawrence? Will you play with Messina and them, or you with Chateaugay and those guys?
Well, for the last 5 years, we were good enough that even though we're a Class C school, we played with the A's and the B's, with Messina, Potsdam, Malone, and all those guys. We played in that division for the last 5 years. So we're getting out this year for a season, hopefully, if we have a season. But we've been with the big boys for the last 4 or 5 years.
So. That must help you in the sectionals, though, huh?
Yeah, we are always prepared. We've learned how to take those defeats and get something out of it, and not look at it as as just a plain old butt whooping when we do get them. They don't happen that often, but Ogdensburg is in Canton the last couple of years have been really, really good, and they can put a hammer to you. But we get the most out of it, and we try to take it. We take the positives out of it, much like your loss to Jerry and Potsdam years ago. I'm used to that. That's happened before, but we always take the most out of it that we can.
Yeah, that's good. And the kids must believe in what you're doing, then. If they keep coming back like that. Yeah,
they do. We're pretty happy, especially in a hockey town. We're in a pretty big hockey town here, to be able to field a basketball team the way we have the last 15 years. I'm proud of that. So
I'll tell you what, you have 2 sports like that in the winter. That's a lot for a Class C school.
Well, and Coach, twice. So I've gone to states 4 times. Lucky enough to go to states 4 times, and 2 of those times the hockey team went with us at the same time.
Really?
And that's unheard of in New York State, to send a Class C school the same gender 2 sports in the same season. That's just unheard of. Messina does it all the time, but they're a Class A school, and that's a little bit different. But for a Class C school to do it, that's kind of unheard of. So
that's tremendous. Good for you. Do you see Joe much at all, or no?
I've gone down to visit him. He doesn't come home much anymore. He's officially full-time in Florida.
Oh, really?
And I'm hopeful that, I've asked him, but I don't beg. I'm hopeful that we can get him on this show, and, be able to, maybe this will prompt him to come on. I'd love for some people to hear some Joe Javenville stories. So.
Yeah. Talk to him all. Please tell him I said hello. I always liked him. He's you got guys like him and Billy Merton and Jerry Horahan. Those actually, when I was started at Osable, we used to take our kids down to a place called Toby Hanna Sports Camp down in Pennsylvania, and Jerry took his kid down there also. And at the time, you can only have 2 kids from each team go to a camp, play on the same teams from each high school. If you took them to like KC's camp, you couldn't have more 2 kids. But we take them down to Pennsylvania, and nobody knew and nobody cared. We were terrible anyhow, but we get to play 10 games. You played half a season, you played 2 games with 5 kids. So you got half a season and right there. And our superintendent was great about it. Give us a couple station wagons, take them off down there. And I learned, actually, there's a guy named Herb McGee, was the coach at Philadelphia Textile, and he won 1,000 games down there. But best shooting coach I've ever seen. I still use all his stuff all the time. We still work with a lot of local kids. We worked with, remember Tommy Ryan that played for Saranac? Probably before your time. He played with Morristown. It was a good team. But he has a couple kids, Keegan and Shannon. Keegan was a 2-time All-American at St. John Fisher, and Shannon's she was just an All-American this last year at St. Anselm's. But he's like 6'8" and she's 6'5". But from the time they were probably freshmen, Tommy used to bring them down to the old gym in Osable Forks, and we worked with them 2-3 nights a week. And I'll tell you what, those kids worked. I mean, they listen, they pick up, and Keegan was a senior. He'd been 2-time All-American already. He calls me like Thanksgiving night, the night before Thanksgiving, probably 10 o'clock that night. I get a text. Coach, I need some work on my foul shooting. Thanksgiving morning, we're down at the gym in Osable Forks at 9:30 in the morning and work on his foul shooting. He's shooting 85% for the year, but that's the kind of kids they are, and you know this. The ones that put in a little bit extra are the ones that get a little bit extra out of it, and kids nowadays, everybody says they're different, and I've been working with these high school kids for the last 10 years and with the college kids for the last 7. I don't think they're that much different. I think they still want to be coached. I don't think you can still tell them anymore they can go run through a wall and they'll do it. But I think if what you're showing them has value and they understand it's going to make them better, they'll do anything you want them to do. And they understand that, we always talked about a fist. You have all 5 fingers that are together. It's so much easier to make things happen. I got a couple kids that work with downtown, and they just put the rims back on the baskets again. You got a couple kids that work down there, and the one kid's a good player. People say, well, I didn't want to work, I just texted him the other night. I said, we're going to be down there at 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. If you're not working someplace, bring your own ball. I get a text right back. Sure thing, coach, I'll be there. Bing, they're there. But sometimes we forget. We got to ask them. They're a little bit afraid maybe sometimes, but tell them what you need to do, what you want to do, and here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to make you better. And I think they still want to learn. They're not getting a lot of pushing anyplace else. And I think this is one of the last places we have is the sports where we can really teach them value. We can teach them about working together. We can teach them about basically just loving each other. And I think we've sort of gotten away from that. In almost everything we do. We don't do everything together. We need so many more things together right now, and I think the sports is a great place for it. I think what you guys are doing here is tremendous too. I think this is a great thing you have going. I mean, it's you put a lot of time and effort into something like this, and I appreciate you having me on.
It's a pleasure for us to do it. I mean, we're getting to share in so many legendary sports people's stories, and I know personally I've learned a lot, and I'm getting to I'm getting to hear a lot of stories. It's great. And I think the other guys will agree.
I'm hoping he can hear me a little better now. Can you, Coach?
Yeah, I got you good, P.
Okay.
I got an interpreter here. Great interpreter.
I think I had a microphone problem, and I just solved it. So hopefully I got it taken care of. But so we're trying to fill in with no sports here in the wintertime, and actually I think Joey and I were on the same wavelength here, literally within days of each other, going, we should bring this back, because we did this back in 2014. But it was but it was in a bar setting. We'd go and we'd have commercial breaks. We'd have dinner and a couple of drinks with whoever we interviewed with, and we interviewed Tom Curl in Plattsburgh at Uno Pizzeria right there on in Route 3. So.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. So we did this back in 2014. We had Jerry Howard on our show. Coach Myrna has had the invite sent to him. We haven't sent all that list that you told us about. All those names you rattled off are the cream of the crop. And
what you should have done, you should have got us guys over here. Had a driver to get us home.
Yeah. I would have known. We could have done an interview right at camp. I actually broadcast a couple of those cornhole tournaments years ago, and then I started playing in them after I started making the boards. So
because nobody listened to the broadcast.
Yeah.
I think about too. I got a grandson that's over in Vermont. He's at CVU, which is probably the biggest school in Vermont, and he plays baseball. And they won a state championship last year, and they only lost 2 kids. They were so looking forward, everything coming back, and all of a sudden they had nothing. So I've got to watch this 4-month break where they couldn't do anything, and I've seen it from a different perspective than a lot of people have, what these kids lost and what they gave up. We've all lost a lot of things and gave up, but it's such a tough time for these kids. And I watched them come through this, and you like to say they're going to be better for it, and you hope they are, but I've got a lot of respect for all these kids that lost out on what they didn't have. They're playing right now. They're playing like 26 games in 28 days. You're playing Legion right now, but it's not the same. And I don't know what's going to happen out of this now. It's I don't know how it's going to get. I don't know if they're able to go back to school, if they're going to have sports again, or Joe, do you have anything what they're doing over there? Or?
Well, Governor Cuomo kind of laid out some groundwork today with the New York State Regents, but the 2 of them still haven't come up with anything definite yet that's going to lead in my direction as an athletic director to, we're still not allowed to, nobody's still allowed in the building. Nobody's still allowed in school grounds when it comes to workouts or summer sessions or anything like that. Open gyms. I mean, I couldn't have an open gym right now if I wanted one. So it's a day-by-day issue, but at least today there were meetings, and now we're starting to move forward with, hopefully some yes or no answers soon, because I'm it's tough. It's tough. It really stinks as an athletic director right now. There's not much I can do. I'm prepared for a season, but I'm not prepared to know how I'm going to incorporate that season or how it's going to be done. I'm still waiting. We're all still waiting for guidelines, and if we have a season, I'm sure that there's going to be things that need to be done that I've never done before. So, and that goes for everybody.
Most colleges have canceled their fall sports. Is that the same over where you are, Coach? Fall sports are kaput? Or?
Yeah, well, they're still talking over here. They don't know what's going to happen with this. Whatever, I'm sure, Joey, whatever they got over there today, they have over here the same thing. But I know that the Nest got canceled. Like, when you see schools like the Big Ten and them saying they're not going to play any outside football games, I think the next step is none at all. I don't see how they can play football. I think, Joey, if you want to have in-season workouts, you could probably tell them, our kids never defend more than 6 feet from each other anyhow. Maybe let them go. That's the only way you can say basketball, But
there was a day, Coach. There was a day, Coach. That's how we defended. Yeah. So
there's certain days we all do, right? It's a good thing here. But it's just unfortunate for all these kids. They look forward to this all their lives, and that one time that they have to have that time out there, and they don't have it. It's tough. It's tough on everybody. But you know what? I think there's so many things in life that we get handed that aren't easy. But I think having a sports background helps us an awful lot as far as overcoming adversity and finding out how far you can push yourself in a lot of ways. When these things happen to you, that, I can still make it, and I can still take one more step, and I can still take, one more day at a time like this. And I've been very, very lucky. I think we all have, that we've had these kind of backgrounds that when things do get tough, we're able to fight through them. And this is just one more thing we're able to deal with. And hey, that's part of life. We got to get up the next morning and keep going, and that's why we're here.
Well said, Coach. I mean, it's absolutely right. I mean, you have to, you got to wake up every day and keep forging ahead, hope for positive, be prepared for negative, and just keep trudging along. So, Coach, we got to wind down, but we can't thank you enough for coming on. We've heard, like I said, you have been brought up probably more than any individual I can think of in so many of our shows, from Bill Porter to Chad Ledoux to Jerry Welch to Tom Spanbauer. They have all mentioned you without prompting from us at all. And again, we can't thank you enough for somebody that didn't know who the heck I was to take a message from me and say, yeah, sure, I'd like to come on. That meant a lot to me, and I did that because Jerry Welch told me to. Yep. He said, don't worry, just get in touch with him and he'll do it. And well, Jerry was right again. So, Coach, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, Joe, I've had a good time with this, and I think what you guys are doing right there is tremendous. It's good for everybody. It's a good break in here, and I've watched a couple of your shows, and I think it's neat. I watched one with Jerry, and he's still got it. He's still he don't forget much.
No, he does.
Right there with it, and we've had some great times together. So it's once again, I hope you guys have a great summer. Pete, make sure who's your partner when you play up here in the cornhole tournament?
I'm a leftover, so whoever wants me. So
well, I'll tell you what, if you get left over, you let me know. You're lefty or righty?
I'm a righty.
I'm a lefty. We can go from both sides. We'll clam in the middle right there.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
All right. Dave, great to see you again.
Hey, you too, Coach. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for that, guys.
Time.
All right,
if I had to turn this off, I'll be in good shape.
Hold on a second. Well, that's going to be it here for ESS Empire State Sports and the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show with our hosts, Joey Ream, Dave Barlett, myself, Pete Gosel, and our special guest, Coach John Konowitz. We hope everybody had a great time watching. Good night and stay safe.